Well, let's bring on Daryl Moose Johnston. 3 rings, 2 Pro Bowls. Yeah, it is. You know, it's funny. When you live in Dallas, you're in the belly of that thing, and we're on the outside, and we see chaos. We're like, they're not playing well. McCarthy's getting heat. But when you're in Dallas, what is the temperament about what the Cowboys are, Moose, today?
I think it's all good. I think there's genuinely definite concern about going on the road in the playoffs. I think that's the big trepidation right now. But as long as they can play at home, I think they're good. I agree. You're trying to think back. When was the last time that they really looked good against a quality opponent? So I think that's one of their bigger challenges,
sure.
and very similar to a lot of the teams we're talking about. Everybody's had that little bump during the course of the season. There's nobody that's had smooth sailing this year, not even the 49ers when they had that 3-game losing streak. So I think it's going to be really interesting getting into the playoffs. I think what we've seen the last couple of years is who is that team that's playing the best football as they're coming in. I think we've got another season of that. Is there anybody that can peak? And, potentially the Cleveland Browns that you guys touched on.
Yep. Yeah. So, your Cowboy teams were unique. You could play with power. You could play with finesse. You could beat people over the top. You could win situationally with Jimmy and Troy. That's rare. So you had the Eagles last week blowing a 15-point game, which when you look at their O-line and their ability to control time of possession, it's inexplicable. My take on Philadelphia, Moose, has been they don't know what they are. And even if you're a flawed team, if you know what you are, it just, in these close games, Michigan football, they know what they are. They're going to lean on that run game, right? And I look at Philadelphia, and you had the game. What are they offensively? Explain what you would do and what you see with them, because they had that game wrapped up, and all of a sudden they didn't.
Well, I think the big thing is one of the areas that they've talked about that's different from last year is getting out to that big lead and then allowing the defense to kind of control the game, let the pass rush get after the quarterback. They were in a perfect situation last week to do that at 21-6 at halftime, and they didn't do it. And I think you make a great point. I don't think they know what their identity is this season because they're trying to be what they were last season, and they don't have the ability to do that. I don't think we've appreciated the loss of Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon enough. And we got a little bit of that feel this week because Jonathan Gannon came back, and you heard some of the defensive players kind of talk about him in a very, very positive light. And I'm not being critical of Sean Desai or Matt Patricia, but when your head coach or your defensive coordinator has a connection to all the guys and they play a different style of football, it's an elevated pace. It's a lot of fun. It's a Butch Davis type, coach, that kind of motivates you and, very rah. And, I just think that they're struggling to adjust to the new dynamics of Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator and Matt Patricia now as their defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So you have the Lions this week. Vikings need a win to help get in order a wild card berth. And I think Minnesota's been a great story. I'm not sure they're a great team. They're on multiple quarterbacks, but Detroit's fascinating. Usually, when you have a really good team that wins a division, the quarterback or the coach are the story. I think their front office is arguably the story. I just think they've drafted so well. Big risks on linebackers, tight ends, running backs early, and they've all hit. I honestly thought when Dallas lost to Miami, I still like Dallas more. When Detroit lost to Dallas, I still like Detroit more. I think they beat the Rams. I think they're deep. I think they're physical. I think they're twitchy. What did you make of the Dallas-Detroit game? When you lose games and you think you're the better team, does it affect you going forward? Because they are a young team, Detroit, in spots.
I think they have to be very careful this week. Or not this week, but when they get into the playoffs. I read that quote from some of the guys. We can't wait to see Dallas in the playoffs. They've already got it mapped out how it's going to happen. With the 2 and the 3 playing. We did that back in 1991 against Detroit. They beat us up pretty good at Texas Stadium, and we beat Chicago in the wild card round, and we got Detroit in the divisional round. And we were a little bit revenge motivated, and they beat us. They beat us worse up in Pontiac than they did during the course of the regular season. So just be careful about that revenge factor as motivation. Understand why you didn't win the game against Dallas, and you can go into the whole 2-point play and it was stolen from us. Whatever you want to think, there's everybody that's speaking to the press right now, players, coaches alike, are talking about the things away from the 2-point play that if they would have done better, they would have been able to win that game. So that needs to remain the focus. You don't want to get too tilted towards that revenge component, because that's never a great motivating factor. So that would be my one concern right now, is a couple of the guys, Aiden Hutchinson coming out and saying, a little bit, can't wait to get back to him. It doesn't matter what happened in the regular season. We'll get him in the postseason. We'll, kind of that we were at a game taken from us and we're going to get revenge on these guys. No, that's not the right way to motivate yourself. The fact is you're North Division champions for the first time in 30 years. You're into the playoffs. You're hosting a home playoff game. Stay with all the positives that you've accomplished this year and why you are. Just the things that you talked about. You're physical up front. You're explosive down the field. You're powerful. You're twitchy. All the things that you talked about. That's what you need to start talking about as you're getting ready for the playoffs.
All right, there's the rest versus rust theory. Now, Christian McCaffrey, give him the week off. He's dinged up. But what is your sort of take on Baltimore, San Francisco? Mahomes is resting this week. Take your history. Did you like a week off, or did you want to play? If you're hot, did you just want to keep getting out there? I think there's young teams in the league like Detroit. I would play my starters. Old teams like San Francisco, I'd probably rest some guys. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's an individual basis, and Jimmy was really good with that. Obviously, you're going to sit down the guys. If you have an injury in week 18 and then you're missing somebody for the playoffs, I mean, it's going to be devastating. So, be selective in that. Troy, Michael, and Emmett didn't play. If we had everything kind of sewed up and we couldn't improve our playoff positioning, there was no reason for them to play. But a lot of the other guys played. Our offensive line played. I played through the game. Jay Novacek played through the game. Our defense was pretty much out there in full go. So I think that there is value in continuing to play at a high level. And I think we saw that, a number of years when that wild card team gets hot, towards the end of the season, because they've been in playoff mode for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks just to get into the playoffs. And they're playing their best football, and they don't want that week off. They want to continue to play and stay on that roll. You look at what the Giants did with Eli Manning. On 2 occasions, got into the playoffs and were playing their best football coming in, and then rolled through the playoffs. So I think there is value in continuing to have your guys go out there and play and execute at game speed, but you also have to be smart with a Patrick Mahomes, with a Christian McCaffrey, the key guys on your team that you can't afford to lose, or carrying a little bit of an injury, throughout the course of the season, and it just gives them a little bit of extra time to get healthy.
Well, this weekend, it was probably done weeks ago, the USFL and XFL merged. You were the president of ops for USFL. I have been a huge believer in 3 things over the last 15 years. The MLS, it's grown. The UFC 20 years ago when they were throwing it off cable, and spring football. So I've been right on 2 of them. I am convinced spring football with legalized gambling and our addiction to these urgent sports where there's just limited number of games, I would invest in this tomorrow if I could. I think it's going to work. I think because of COVID, we've had disruptions. Your sort of take on the UFL, the merging of it, you'll work for that operation as well. Your take on spring football.
I agree with you. That's why I continue to be involved in it. For me, it's having the opportunity to change the trajectory of a young man's life. There's great football players out there, and whether it's timing or circumstance, whatever the reasons are, they didn't get the opportunity to get to the NFL and to be able to give them that other chance and really kind of help them find out the reasons why they didn't stay in the NFL and help correct them. And a lot of times, it's not football oriented. It's preparation, accountability, being a pro at everything you do. Those are the elite of the elite when you get up to the NFL level, and you've got to be good at everything. And I think a lot of times we see guys who are really, really talented football players, and they're not staying at the NFL. They'll get a tryout and they might get into camp and maybe get on the practice roster, but they're not staying there for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And why is that? And we get around them on the day-to-day basis, and you start to see some of the behavioral things, and we can help them there as well. Yep. So, that's the big thing for me. And this time around, I hope you're right, Colin. I hope you're going to go 3 for 3 on this one, because for me, it was going to be who's going to be the last league standing.
Yeah.
And I think the NFL was going to kind of stay on the sidelines a little bit and figure out, is it going to be the USFL? Is it going to be the XFL? The fact that we've done the merger now and we've kind of accelerated that process, I hope that we can really start to have meaningful conversations with the NFL, because I truly believe when you look at the offensive line, you look at the quarterback play, Cleveland's on their fourth, they go to Joe Flacco. Jaron Hall gets an opportunity as a fifth-round draft pick in Minnesota. He doesn't really have the success that you would hope. Nick Mullins, he's got great potential, but he's throwing the ball all over the field. There's interceptions. So getting those types of players down into our league and allowing them to see the game at game speed. It's not the NFL game speed, but it's better than practices. It's better than a joint practice. And I had multiple coaches throughout the course of my travels this year doing the broadcasting for the NFL season that understand it as well. And they've come up to me and said, hey, listen, you guys gotta get this thing to the finish line, because we really need that ability to either pull players from your league or send players down to continue to grow and develop. And one of the great guys, Evan Neal, his 7th round pick overall. Why is he struggling in the NFL? And I'm not saying that's the type of guy that would come into the UFL, but it shows you that even from a program like Alabama and a guy as talented as Evan Neal, making that jump to the NFL is extremely challenging. And anything you can do to give a player more time at task, more attention to detail, to work on the finer points of the game. And I think that that's where the lack of time on the practice field, in the meeting rooms, from the college level to the professional level, we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years, that's where it's had the impact, is on that attention to detail and the time on task for these guys to really grow and develop and become masters of their craft at certain positions.
Moose, great seeing you as always. Appreciate it, man.
You got it. Happy New Year, Colin.
Same to you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.